This is the Rising Tide Startups podcast, where we chat with startup founders from all over the globe to help you escape the cubicle and begin your own startup journey. Make sure you take notes. Every episode of Rising Tide Startups is sponsored by Podbrand Media. Let Podbrand create and host your company branded podcast. Learn more at podbrandmedia.com. This is Kevin Pruitt with another episode of Rising Tide Startups. I have a very special guest with me today, Lizzy Brooks. Lizzy, thanks for joining us on Rising Tide.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So I don't want to be presumptive. So do you go by Lizzy or
I
is
do.
that
Yeah.
okay? All right. Well, I should have asked you that before I hit the big
That's
red
okay.
record button. But hey, if you and I met like at a business networking event, how would you introduce yourself to me?
I would say, hi, I'm Lizzy. I own a virtual assistant agency. I've had my agency since 2018, and we have a team of over 50 virtual assistants, all based out of the United States.
All US based.
Yes. Yeah. We only work with US-based clients and assistants.
That is in the VA space, and I'm a newbie into the VA space, so it's really interesting because there's almost like two schools of thought. There's like two philosophies. There's like we are only US based, or that all of our VAs are international. So what was when you first started this, was there something that kind of led you to have a conviction or an ethos one way or the other?
Yes. So there's probably two things. I was working corporate jobs for industries that I wasn't necessarily like in love with, but I was good at like logistics. So logistics has always been like my jam. But I also had friends. I started in the VA world like around 2017, 2018. And I had friends that had successful like Etsy businesses. It was a very like hot thing to have. And I just was so jealous because I was like, I'm not crafty like at all. So I was like, what could I do from home and like be in charge of my own time and schedule? Because I was recently married. I had stepdaughters, but we wanted to have like a family. But I was commuting an hour and a half each way. I was working for jobs that needed me to network. I was in business development, so it wasn't just the 9 to 5. It was like the late hours. It was the long commute. There was a lot that went into it. So I met somebody who was just kind of breaking out into the VA world herself. She kind of gave me that foundational start to understand all the things I do for all these other corporations, I could just be doing for myself and implement that, and with like my skills and talents from 18 years of work history. So that's kind of what broke me into it. And then I saw, with the background that I have of business development and networking, I felt comfortable and confident that I could hone into my network, and I kind of just veered off and started my own thing and never looked back. I also never gave myself like a chance to fail. So I had my corporate job at an asset management firm, and I gave my 2 weeks, and that was it. Like, there was no plan in place. I just literally went for it.
No golden parachute. No, nope. We burn the boats.
It was just,
we're all in.
Do it and do it great because you got bills to pay.
Well, I think sometimes that, hunger is a great motivator for success. I have a philosophy about entrepreneurship that you have to have two things. You have to have the fear of failure, and you have to have the success or the reward of success, built into that, and to really thrive. But how did you decide that we're only going to use US based VAs versus, hey, we could maybe do this cheaper if we went to the Philippines or India or Thailand or, fill in the blank?
So, I don't know if it was necessarily like a goal straight from the beginning, but in 2020 is when I went from being like a solo entrepreneur to having my first son and needing to bring somebody on to help cover while I was gonna take a maternity leave. But then 2020 happened, and
Hmm.
the rest of it is history, just because that really boomed our industry.
Yeah.
So I didn't take a maternity leave. I brought on a close friend who is still with us today. She's now our business development manager. And we just kind of like hand in hand worked off of what we felt was in our comfort zone.
Hmm.
But really, I guess one of the biggest factors is we have honed into a specific set of industries and skills that we felt the best form of communication is within an hour or two of your client. And
Hmm.
I haven't personally worked with assistants overseas, but I'm very proud to be an American, to have an American based company. And to me, I want to be able to support women in positions that I was in that were looking to contribute to their family, but have that freedom and flexibility. And so I guess there's like a few kind of aspects of why we've always stayed United States based. But really, I think one of the biggest key factors is while we are very communicative with our clients, we have found that being within like a reasonable time zone just makes that easier and a more streamlined approach.
Now, you're not talking travel time. You're talking about time zones. Like,
Time zones, yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
is there any advantage to being close enough that they could meet face to face if needed be? Have you experienced that at all?
So a little bit, we are a virtual based company, so we
Hmm.
do really try to draw that line very clearly.
Sure.
However, on the flip side, we tend to have really long lasting relationships
Hmm.
with our clients, and our assistants that are paired with our clients love that rapport that is built. So I have clients who fly their assistants out at like the year end or throughout the year to do like celebratory get-togethers.
Hmm.
So we don't stop that because obviously we want them to continue that bond and
Right.
relationship. So I have people who will fly them out for like a full spa retreat weekend because they hit their goals and they met their metrics and things like that. I also have clients who come to Arizona a lot, just either on business or pleasure. So if we do have like an Arizona based assistant for them, then they'll meet up, they'll take them out
Hmm.
to lunch and things like
Sure.
that. So we at our agency don't do in-person related tasks,
Hmm.
but we can handle all the remote tasks.
I mean, I love that the idea that there is some kind of celebration or benefit that they can add if hey you hit those metrics or even just faithful service.
Yeah, yeah.
You show up every day, you deliver things on time. I mean, what more can we ask?
We kind of have a tagline, I guess, that's just basically if you treat your assistants like they're an extension of your team, in turn, we're able to treat your business like it's our own.
Hmm.
So we kind of pride ourselves on that if you build that trust with us, like we're here to support you 100%. So it actually brings me so much joy when clients say, is it okay if I, fly them out for a weekend or, get them a gift or whatever? They always ask me like, what do they like? Or what would make their day. And so I love when I get that because then I know that everybody is bought in to the way that we want them to be.
Yeah, yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, like I said, I'm a newbie to the space, but it does seem like that what I've seen so far is that they quickly become a team member.
Oh,
I
yeah,
mean,
that's our goal.
it's
Yeah.
not like a contractor that we're hiring to just to provide a service. I mean, there really is a relational side of this,
Mhm.
that is very important too. So, you said you started in 2018, kind of launched in
Yeah.
2018, but was the initial goal, hey, I just want to like broker my own services out as a virtual assistant. That's my goal. I want to kind of try to replace as much as of my previous salary as I can, kind of have a little time freedom, have a life, work-life balance thing going on.
Yeah.
Was that the goal?
That was the initial goal. The initial goal was just to not commute, to be here for my daughters at the time. They're now grown. But it was really just to kind of be more family focused. And then with 2020 happening and having my first son and the rapid referrals and growth that we received, there was no, it wasn't, it would have been like a mistake to just be like, sorry, I'm
Yeah.
booked, right?
Yeah.
Like it was like in it just was, it was so fast paced, especially in the summer of 2020, that it was just go, go, go. And what can we do to keep up? So it's nothing what I set out for in the beginning, but I truly feel like the universe had like a better, bigger plan for me and my family. And that meeting the person who brought me into virtual assistants was that catalyst to then just, it just like opened the key to the city for a
Hmm.
future that I'm very, very blessed to have.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, it's nobody on listening to this is going to make any assumption that says it just happened. I mean, there's a lot of hard work that went
Yeah.
into organizing and calling on all the previous jobs that you had, all the skills that you brought to the table. But what uh, what do you think was the biggest surprise when you transition from being, kind of a one person shop? I'm a VA to like now I'm running an agency. What is the biggest like wow moment you had that you're thinking, I had no idea this was going to happen?
Um, well, being that I did not have like a business degree or any clue, I think just being fortunate that I've always followed my intuition
Hmm.
to kind of like guide all the decisions in my life, but really guiding these business decisions. I think some of the things that have stuck out to me is, and I think this is where a lot of business owners can understand the flip side of this. So, in order to take on clients, you need assistance, right? Like to grow. But
Hmm.
in order to get assistance, you need clients. So it's like what comes first, like the chicken or the egg.
Catch
And so,
22. That's right.
yeah, so it's like I think that business owners, especially maybe smaller businesses, they feel that same thing. Like, I know I need help. I know I need an assistant, but I need the work to back
Hmm.
the pay for the assistant.
Mm.
So that was like, that's always been, you know, I wish I had a magic 8 ball that said, you're going to get 10 new referrals next month. You better have like the capacity to keep up
Yeah.
because we just don't know. Some summers, for example, are really slow, and some summers, like this summer, has been, pretty fast paced again. And so I have just brought on recently 10 new team members. And now, 6 weeks later, I'm like, oh my gosh, I think that we need some more team members, because a lot of our team members, they start off part time and then they build up a client roster. But we've recently been blessed to have some larger clients that are 160 hours a month, and that takes like a larger team to accomplish when on average our normal retainer is like 20 hours a month. So,
Mm.
when you don't know what awesome referral you're going to get next, it's kind of like, again, do you hurry up and train the next kind of group of people
Hmm.
to take on the next referrals, or is it going to slow down? So I think that's always my, I'm always going to work hard to make sure that we're going to meet the needs and the capacity. So sometimes it just feels like this teeter totter for
Yeah.
us, at least.
You touched on something really interesting, and I am absolutely blind in this area. But so you talked about, some we have a retainer of 20 hours a month versus 160 hours a month or whatever. I would guess this is a guess. I would guess the average business owner out there, if you ask them how much time does this take, this task that you think, you need to outsource type thing, that they wouldn't have a clue off the bat. They would think it's somewhere between 5 and 30 hours a month
Yeah.
or whatever. So
Yeah.
how do you coach clients, through that? I'll let you answer that one, then I've got a follow-up question on
Yeah.
top of that. So to walk
Uh,
us through how you would help a client find that equilibrium.
so in my opinion, it's always less than they think. So oftentimes, so my agency, we primarily, like, we help all business owners of all sizes. However, we specialize in attorneys, CPAs, bookkeepers, and wealth management. So we have those industries pretty like honed in. And when an attorney comes to me and says, I had a 40-hour a week employee, I know I need 40 hours a week. I need this like yesterday. Okay, I'm going to sell you the lowest package because we can add on from there, but I'm not going to take your money for hours that aren't used, and hours in our business, in our agency, don't roll over. So I'm always going to sell them the lowest
Hmm.
package, which is 20 hours a month, not 40 hours a week, because as that dating process happens and we get to like the 90 days where everything is just like up and running and all the momentum, everything's clicking, 9 times out of 10, they've accomplished with our team a fraction of what the hours that they said their
Hmm.
employee was working.
Yep.
Um, so I always challenge that off the bat because when you're paying somebody's 40-hour a month salary or 40-hour a week salary, not everybody, but I can
Hmm.
almost guarantee not everybody is actually documenting 40 actual working hours. But when you're working with us and we have contracted hours, we to the minute will write down everything.
Hmm.
So everything is documented down to the minute. If it's a minute email, if it's an hour-long task, and we have it on a time card. So the girls that work for me only get paid off of the minutes and the hours that they work. And they're going to be honest about that because they don't want to lose that income, right?
Hmm.
They don't want to jeopardize that. And our goal is always to be efficient, but be timely and aware of everyone's budget. So for us, I can always almost guarantee your 40-hour hour a week employee is not working 40 hours, and I can save you some time and money by getting you a VA.
I mean, is that using like a time tracker software type thing where you're, yeah.
Yeah, so there are time tracking tools out there. We have created our own, and we have created our own time cards and our own tracking system. That's just like proprietary to Virtually Brooks.
Hmm.
And it has like a running total, and the client has access to that as well.
So, all right, let's say that you bill me 20 hours a month.
Mhm,
Let's say the VA does it in 18 and a half. Am
mhm.
I credited back an hour and a half, or is that just kind of that's the contract you signed and we just happen to be more efficient than that?
So our hours do not roll over, but I wouldn't let a client get to the end of the month without giving me enough work to make sure that we're matching that 20 hours. So we will find you a project to make sure that we will find the assistant in a project to make sure that we're hitting those numbers. It's almost impossible not to use 20 hours a month
Yeah.
with the work that we do, just
Yeah.
because we already have like a list of recommendations on what your industry could utilize an assistant for. So right off the bat, we do our kickoff call. We establish what your needs are. So we go through a whole brainstorming delegation process. I talk a lot in my agency about like the art of delegation. So I will coach the client on making sure that we're reaching those goals. Once they really get a hang of that art of delegation, that 90 days comes and they're like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe I did not do this sooner. And then we help them again reach those goals and match what they're looking for.
Hmm.
So in our agency, they can go up in hours without any penalties or fees or anything like that. It's just the same hourly rate, but we don't go below the 20 hours. But I promise
Hmm.
you, we will make sure those 20 hours get used.
So who's tracking that? Is that Lizzy Brooks,
So,
CEO?
yeah. So I have myself, I have Casey, who is our operations and business development. It's kind of
Hmm.
a mixed role. So between the two of us, we oversee all of our clients and all of our assistants. But we do have a middle row. We have supervisors that help oversee each of our teams.
Hmm.
So at Virtually Brooks, we actually do everything in teams of two, which is kind of what is our unique differentiator. So when you're working with us, you have two assistants, they work as one, and they divide and conquer tasks in an efficient manner. And so we have me, Casey, a team of supervisors and a whole structured team of virtual assistants. And then we have specialties of this group works in like a marketing aspect. This group works in an administrative
Hmm.
aspect. And then from there, it's broken down. These people work with attorneys. These people work with CPAs. These people are a little bit more general because honestly, administrative work is administrative work. It's just kind of the flavor of your business is
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
changes that. And then we have like podcast marketing and pitching is kind of done by a different team of people. So we have it really broken out and structured, which is something that we've really refined over these last 4 years since it's become like an agency more than just myself.
So you do podcast booking or what's that service?
So we do have a podcast pitching, and we have one person who does podcast editing. It's a very, very small portion of what we do, but
Hmm.
we do have two people who do that. And then we have some people on our team that do podcast pitching as well as keynote pitching.
The more I ask you, the more the tentacles of the octopus are
Yeah.
growing here. So
Yeah, we really refine in what we do, but we do have like some pillars, some differentiating pillars
yeah,
that maybe some agencies, they may just be general admin or they may hone in on a specific skill set.
right. Well, I am just now starting to peel back the layers of Virtually Brooks here, but we're going to take a quick break right here and listen to our sponsor, hear from our sponsor, the great sponsor of this podcast. Lizzy will be right back. At Navicus, we know you spend far too much time on administrative tasks. Let us take those off your plate so you can focus on the highest value activities in your business. We have highly trained, highly vetted specialists ready to take on those administrative responsibilities at an affordable and effective rate. Check us out at navicus.com, proud sponsor of Rising Tide Startups podcast. We are back. Lizzy, thank you again for joining us on Rising Tide. It's been a pleasure to chat with you the first part of our podcast, but now we're going to take a little deeper dive. We're going to talk about some lessons learned, since 2018, 2019, 2020, whenever you kind of transitioned and, metamorphosis from the out of the butterfly up here to running your own agency here. So what are some just as you look back, what are some things that you wish you would have known? What are one or two just really key things, man? I wish I'd have known that in 2020 that I know today that would be
Yeah.
game changing.
So a couple things come to mind. One, when I first started having people join as an agency, I the times were different. I mean, it's only been 4 years, but like 4 or 5 years ago, we were only paying contractors like $13 to $15 an hour, right?
Hmm.
Like, or minimum wage was like in that realm. And
Yep.
then it's grown so much. So knowing, I guess, how to properly scale with the economies scaling of
Hmm.
everything that we've gone through as a country. Obviously didn't see any of that coming, so I didn't know how to like navigate it. We've navigated it fine, but just looking back, it is always surprising, like, wow, we've come a really far way in what feels like a really short amount of
Hmm.
years. But then we're like just we have really honed in and really defined our training and our interview and training processes. Um, I used to think like, oh, it's okay, you don't have like a ton of experience, like I'll just teach you. And in the beginning, maybe that was okay because like we only had a couple of us.
Hmm.
Um, I don't necessarily, I obviously want to always help. Like I am that person that's like, you get a job and you get a job and you get a job. Like I want everybody to like be doing what we're doing and I want you to have that fulfillment. However, since we have really scaled up to some what I think are like high class industries, we really have to bring high class experience.
Yep.
Um, and so we've really changed the way that we do our interviews. And then that really weeds out the people who maybe just don't match the skill set that we're
Hmm.
looking for these days. And then if they get through what's like a 7 process interview, um, then they go through our training. And then we've really built out a much better training and more efficient with, video recordings and things like that, where we're being much better with our time management from
Hmm.
a leadership perspective. And then from there, we coach and train always along the way. But that's been a huge game changer is having the discernment to say, okay, we can't take everybody as much as like I
Hmm.
want to provide this freedom and flexibility for everybody. It does come with a different just expectation, I
Yep.
guess. And so I have very high expectations of what I want my agency to reflect. As much as I don't ever hope I have to go back to a corporate job, I want to keep the corporate standards of
Hmm.
professionalism and showing
Yep.
up and speaking and doing in a really corporate professional manner. Because I do feel like our industry has like um, this maybe vibe where it's like, oh, you're a virtual assistant, you just work on a beach and drink
Hmm.
my
Yep.
drink fruity cocktails all
Get
day
sand in my
and do a
laptop.
little
Yeah.
work and yeah. So I do feel like some people when they think of a virtual assistant, they either think freedom and flexibility means oh they're just like off doing traveling the world, which maybe that is for some people. Maybe not on my team, but we have a corporate standard of
Hmm.
making sure that there's no distractions, making sure you're on secured internet and insecure places so you're not jeopardizing like clients information and things like that.
Right.
So that's something that I feel like we've really fixed and just made it easier so we are confident when working with our clients that we have the people that they're looking for.
Hmm. Is the you talked a little bit about, you can serve a lot of people, but you kind of focus on, these specific areas, whether it's financial, whether it's legal.
Mm-hmm.
Um, how did you arrive at, I mean, did you ask other VA agencies, like, what's the split? Like, if we're charging $25 an hour, how much of that goes to the virtual assistant? How much of that do we need to have for kind of the back office, taxes,
Yeah.
admin, operations, whatever? Is there a kind of a magic percentage that, across the industry, 70/30, something like that? What is kind of
So
the
I
goal
was just
here?
navigating that very blindly, like the first couple of years. I think one of the best things I ever did for myself was hire an incredible CPA bookkeeping firm that handles that aspect and could help me understand where to allocate money, what to do with my money, how to make the money work for our business.
Hmm.
So I've learned a lot about just the back end of like running a business
Yep.
from that perspective. But then in 2023, I did bring on a virtual CFO, and that is the person that her name is Danielle. She's incredible, and we worked all year on learning um, what services need to be priced in what way. So if it's a packaged service, how to work out how many hours that would be, so you're not losing money, or if it's an hourly service, what that needs to be to in order to pay a healthy wage as well as make a profit.
Hmm.
So hiring a virtual CFO in addition to already having the CPA and bookkeeper,
Right.
I would say those three people are really filling in the gap of where it's not that I don't understand it. I understand it fine now. But I'm a big believer in like putting the right person in the right seat for the right job, no matter
Hmm.
if that's an assistant or if that's a CFO.
Right.
So I'm not skilled as a CFO. And so I think putting that person in that seat, she's a virtual fractional CFO,
Hmm.
is like how I have built what I feel like is a successful business without having to maybe learn some hard lessons on my own. It was
Hmm.
just the lesson was get the person for the job and make it work. So that's been my experience.
But is there a generic, I know it's up and down. There some people will be higher, some people will be lower. Is there a like almost an industry expected split, whether is it 70/30, is it 60/40, is it
Um,
80/20, is
so
it
I don't know exactly because Something I've kind of prided myself on is I don't really network with a lot of other agencies or virtual assistants. So if I'm being fully transparent, I don't know what other people are pricing at. I
Hmm.
don't actually know where they do a split. I know the person who led me into this industry with her agency that she was starting, she did like for every, so you had to bring the client to the agency and then you would work it and it was like you were able to use that business name. So you paid like a percentage back. So
Almost
you,
like a franchisee type thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
So in my agency, we kind of do the opposite. Like we
Hmm.
bring in the clients and then we find the right person on our team and we work it differently. So that's the only other experience I know. And then I do know a few solo virtual assistants who, when I've coached them, I've just given them the advice to niche down in your industry and then
Hmm.
figure out what that price point is for your industry. So for us, like working with attorneys, their hourly rate is going to be a lot different than, um, you know, a candle business who just
Right.
needs somebody to do like the back end.
Sure.
So their price points are different. So I don't think, in my opinion, I don't know if there's like a standard. At our agency, if you're brand new and with less experience, we pay anywhere between 18 to $25 an hour, and they're
Hmm.
all 29 in
Right.
contract.
Right. And if you're coaching a VA, like somebody that's out on their own,
Mhm.
do you say, hey, you need to plan on 30% of this is going to go to taxes and business expenses and operations and
Yeah, I usually tell them, obviously consult your CPA,
yeah.
but I say, for me, anywhere, when I was just a solo VA, I used to try to save 20 to 30% for the tax purposes, being that you're a 1099 contractor. And then I just always advise, like, don't bite off more than you can chew. I never went into any business debt. I know a lot of people who have, and they've worked that out and it's fine. But I always say, like, there's always going to be those shiny things. There's always going to be a conference or there's always going to be a tool or a program or something. But if you can't afford it today, just
Hmm.
work towards it, like work towards getting and building. And a lot of people have come to me as a new VA. How do you do it? How do you start? And I'll give them my advice. It's always like niche down, figure out what industries you want to be in. But then from there, then they do that. Then they come back to me and say, okay, now how do I scale? Like, how do I? And then it goes back to what we said before, is that chicken or the egg? Like, how
Right.
do I afford to
Right.
bring on the next member of my team, knowing that I don't know what my income is going to be? So that's always like that next level of advice and risk of cost associated with it.
Yeah.
So,
That
um,
I love that idea that says, hey, I know I need help, but I need clients to afford help, to afford
mhm.
to pay the help. So it
Yeah,
is like it's a vicious cycle. But
yeah.
I just want to ask one more thing, and then I'll ask you for any closing thoughts you have. But do you ever outsource the outsource? Like, do you ever like, are there tasks that are, and I please forgive me fumbling through this question, but, and I certainly don't want to be demeaning to anybody, but there are certain tasks that virtually anyone can do. They're just time consuming and repetitive and
Yeah.
they're not worth $35 an hour,
Mhm.
but they need to get done somehow.
Mhm.
So are there times where you would say, you know what, we have a virtual assistant that is billing, we're billing at $35 an hour or whatever for their services, but there are tasks in there that are about a $5 an hour task or a $10 an hour task that we could like outsource, from being outsourced. Does that make sense? Like have somebody that's even like the second degree doing part of the work for that VA.
Yeah. So in our agency, we really work on making ourselves worth the smallest task to the largest task, being that we're reliable, we're transparent, we're efficient. So for us, we teach and coach. That's part of like the art of delegation. Even if it is a $5 task or a 5-minute task, the more you can learn to let go as the business owner, the
Hmm.
more you're going to see value in getting time back to focus on those income producing tasks.
That's a
So
good way
if
to
that's
handle it.
time with your family, if that's time to grow the next arm of your business, if it's time back just to have that balance so you're not
Hmm.
working nights and weekends and whatever. So we don't really look at tasks as a dollar value as much as like the service is adding a value,
Mm.
because the more you can offload and the more you can learn to let go as the business owner, the more you're going to get that investment back by
Right.
reinvesting into your business and to yourself. So for us, if you are a CPA, we will lower that retainer. So in the busier seasons, it's 20 plus hours a month. But in like July, there's not as much to do,
Hmm.
right? There's always something to do. We'll
Yep.
find things to do. We'll
Mm.
do cleanup, we'll do organizing, file management, things like that, email management. But we will give a break to certain industries just so they don't feel like they have to stop and start and stop and start. So that
Hmm.
way we have long lasting relationships. So we'll lower our retainer for something like that. But we personally, like if somebody's looking for a recommendation on, let's say, a podcast editor, and we only take on very few of that just because we only have a few people who do it. So
Hmm.
I will give them some recommendations of other places, but we don't necessarily, and from our perspective, look at things like a lesser task is a lesser dollar amount. It's just
Yep.
more of investing in your business and investing and getting your business to make you money.
And I mean, I can also see, if you've worked with me for a while, you probably are even going to like have a value add speaking into how I can do things more efficiently, even in my own business. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's been my experience in hiring a VA. So,
Yeah.
but
Oftentimes it's like we're not here to reinvent the wheel, but if you would like enhancements, we're always here to give suggestions.
that's exactly right. And knowledgeable, experience-based suggestions, not just guesses. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
all right. Well, I tell you what, folks, if you listen to this and watch this on YouTube, you can see that she has this dialed in an amazing way. So, in a very short period of time. So, kudos to you, Lizzy, for all the work you put into this. And I know that no person's doing this alone. So it certainly is a team effort. But how would you like to just wrap us up today? And then if you just want to tell people where the best place to find you.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for this opportunity. I really appreciate it. We are at Virtually Brooks on all the socials. So Instagram, we have a freebie in our link in our bio. You can get a freebie for social media templates. You can do a consultation through that link as well. But yeah, we're just virtuallybrooks.com. And we're just very grateful to share what we do and why we do it. And I appreciate you reaching out to us.
Well, Lizzy, it's been a great chat today. This has been one of the best ones we've had in a long time. Is that we crammed so much into such a short period of time. So I highly encourage you to do podcast interviews in the future. Do more of them because you're gifted in
Thank
that
you.
space for sure. But yeah, just
Thank
check
you
out
so much.
virtuallybrooks.com and like you said, and all the socials. And our listeners love for you to go by and check out their services. But Lizzy, thank you again for just taking time today, right here as we head into a weekend and just helping all boats rise in a rising tide. Have a great
Yeah,
weekend.
thank you so much.
I hope you heard some great takeaways from our guests today. Make sure you reach out to them and thank you again for playing your part in helping all boats rise in a rising tide.